All right, we are live. Hey, everybody, and happy Memorial Day. Good Lord, can't even do the intro without flubbing.
It's okay. Fix it in post. You can fix it in post. It'll be fine.
Yeah, no post. There is no post.
No
here.
post?
Anyway, hi guys. How y'all doing? This is Brad and Mike with Dallas Geek. And as always, we are so happy to have you join us today. In case this is the first time that you have seen any of our videos, thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it. Don't forget, in that case, to follow us over on Facebook and like the video. And if you are on YouTube watching us, don't forget to like the video and hit the little subscribe button right about here on the screen. So, you know, we would definitely appreciate that. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into it. We have Cody and Carrie over in the Facebook comments. Hey, how y'all doing? Is Kyla around to tell her that her mom's already saying hi?
She's in the other room, actually.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, with that, guys, Mike, tell us, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, like you started off, Brad, it is Memorial Day. You know, it's kind of it's a day that, without getting too political or getting on a soapbox, I think it's a day that a lot of people take for granted. They think it's just another day off from work when, you know, there is something that we should be celebrating and there are people we should be honoring. So that's what we're doing. We are going to tackle what we consider to be our top 5. How do you want to say it? Because we're not just doing war movies.
No.
How do you want to describe it, Brad?
Top 5 movies to watch on Memorial Day to help celebrate. Now that is different from war movies, based on 2 main criteria. Number 1, we want our top 5 to be based a lot more in reality, rather than the glorified, we'll say, Michael Bayified version of war. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we do want to be able to focus a little bit more on the realistic side of things today. And 2, we want to make sure that the movies on our list are encompassing the character of war and the realistic characters that are involved in it. So we don't want the Uber soldier, we don't want the Rambo, the Schwarzenegger. We want something a lot more grounded, a lot more realistic, and we want movies that will really help you as an audience member connect to what the soldiers in the movies are experiencing, connect to the gravity of the movie without being too bogged down by it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Fair warning, we are on the younger side. As a good friend of the show, Dave Zimmerman, pointed out, we are millennials. So this list may be a little millennial-centric. In fact, I think he jokingly said there better be at least one movie on there from before 1990. Which we did meet that criterion. We got one.
Yes, that is true.
But no, it's our list, and if you have a problem with it, well, suck it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like I said, this is not a top 5 war movies of all time.
No.
And because this is specific to helping you celebrate Memorial Day, our intention was to focus more on movies focusing on more modern warfare and modern war, because that is what we currently do tend to focus on when trying to celebrate and remember back on Memorial Day. You know, we're not going to be, even though it is applicable to our country, we're not going to be going back and trying to remember the Civil War right now. We're not going to be trying to remember the Revolutionary War, but we will be remembering World War II, Korea, Vietnam, everything over in the Middle East.
I was about to say the current war.
Yeah. So that is what we're going to be focusing on today. With that, we will be starting at number 5, working our way up. And Mike, what is our number 5 pick?
So me and Brad at number 5 had the cinematic masterpiece all the way back from the year 2001 or 2002, maybe even 2003, Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
Oh, we did.
I feel like we may actually have
the
internet try to murder us if that was our top 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing top worst war. Oh, that's a different. Okay. Sorry. Honest mistake, guys. Honest mistake. Had to get my one shot in it, Michael. No. So number 5. We're gonna start with the Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
So this is a depiction of the current war. Even though people say that we're not still in a war, we're still in a war. Oh, sorry, not getting political. Sorry. So this was the movie that got Catherine Bigelow her Oscar, won Best Picture, went up against Avatar that year. So there was the big hoopla of ex-spouses going head to head, whatever. But the big thing was that this was kind of a. You had movies that tried to tackle the current war, like with Jarhead. Later on, you had stuff like Lone Survivor, American Sniper, but this one tackles a specific job in the military. This is the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit, the EODs. And Jeremy Renner plays basically an EOD specialist, and just all of the kinds of crap that they go through, having to defuse roadside bombs. It's in terms of. Obviously, I wasn't there, but in terms of capturing the essence and I guess the sheer terror of that, there's quite a few scenes where I'm sitting there watching him try to defuse a bomb on a roadside, and he's getting peppered by enemy fire. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's probably something I wouldn't ever want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most common descriptions that popped up in a lot of the original reviews for the movie that was very, very accurate was that the movie felt very claustrophobic. That even though, yes, the movie is out in the open, you know, you're not actually seeing a character stuck in a tiny space. The context of the movie, the context of the story, the actions and the intensity really does make you as the viewer feel very closed in, and like suddenly something soon is going to just, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that it really does a good job of capturing is the sheer. It kind of puts you. I don't want to use the cliche. It puts you on the edge of your seat, but like you're literally sitting there watching him defuse a roadside bomb, and you're like, oh god, at any point. Like, this is nuts. And then there's the great scene where like he finds the one dead man's device and it goes off into like 12 different directions with 12 different cords, and he's just kind of like, well, okay. And he starts taking his gear off, and his spotter's sitting there. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah. He's like, if I'm gonna die, he's like, this goes off, I'm dead no matter what. He's like, but it's hot.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, huh. So he's certifiably insane as well.
Yeah. So. And for going back to our nerdy normal content, it is kind of fun to be able to look back and see Jeremy Renner and Anthony Mackie working together in a movie before Marvel ever came out with their stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
Plus, there's also the great scene. There's also the great scene where they're sitting there while he's diffusing it. They're going through kind of like, I don't want to say town, but kind of like the village center, and like they're literally treating anybody with a cell phone as a hostile.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, good grief, like it literally could be anybody, and they're checking all their windows as people are like poking their heads out, and it's like, check to see if anybody has a phone, and you're just like, holy crap. Like it's an intense film. It is one of those films that like, as soon as it's over, you kind of just exhale and you're like, oh.
Yeah. No,
Ooh,
and
okay.
that's kind of part of what makes it such a good film within this context, because it does force the viewer to really connect with the emotions that the character is feeling, and to really connect with the situation, and not just see it as, oh sure, it's war, you know, that's a thing
Right.
that happens. You actually get sucked into it and feel just as awful as the characters in the movie, which is a very appropriate reaction considering, you know, it's war. It's not supposed to be awesome. Yeah,
No.
so we while Hollywood is happy to be able to glorify it plenty, there does need to be a certain balancing act that happens overall that gives you enough other opportunities to feel something more realistic about the situation. And The Hurt Locker was absolutely one of those movies. So, speaking of feeling a lot more grounded and a lot less glorified, our number 4 pick is one of the most heavily discussed and beloved, but at the same time debated movies from the Vietnam War collection that Hollywood has offered since, and that was Full Metal Jacket.
Yep.
That, I mean, you want to talk about a movie that still is controversial and still is heavily debated as to whether or not it's a movie that should be seen by everybody just because of how brutal it gets. I mean, going into the movie, if you've never seen it before, the first part of the movie is a completely different thing than the entire rest of it. Like, you go in the first, 20, 30 minutes is not the tone of the rest of the movie. It's not even the same context. It's just something to be able to kind of psychologically set you up for just how messed up the rest of it is, but in a very different way, so that you get thrown off your balance and you don't know what to expect.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's so many memorable lines from that first 20 to 30 minutes of that movie. Like, you would almost say one-liners, but then when you actually look at the context of what's going on, like, they are going through some absolutely awful harassment from their drill sergeant.
Yeah.
It's the lines are funny. Like, they are. Some of them are absolutely hilarious. Like, even now, like, you sit there and you look at it and you'll chuckle and you'll laugh, and then you'll start to realize the context of what's going on, and you're like, holy hell, like, he's basically putting them through psychological torture while he's putting them through physical torture.
Yeah, I mean, go to YouTube and look up, best movie insult compilations, and it's guaranteed that opening scene from Full Metal Jacket is going to be on almost every single one of them. It is renowned for how creative some of the insults get, but once again, that's not the point of the movie. Yes,
No.
It is definitely accurate, based on a lot of veterans' depictions of boot camp, especially Marine boot camp. That's not far off from the truth from a lot of people's experience getting through basic. But the point of the movie is everything that comes after. The point of the movie is how difficult the situation was once they got over to Vietnam. The point of the movie was to depict just how brutal and terrifying of a war Vietnam was, because there wasn't any part of it that made any sense to the people on the ground, because everything was so chaotic from start to finish. It was not easy to survive physically or mentally, and the movie really makes you feel that. Like, the whole movie, you feel... I mean, saying that you have, as a viewer, heart palpitations through most of the movie is not an uncommon reaction.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's the first 30-35 minutes of the movie has a completely different tone from what occurs after that, and there's that one singular moment where when it hits, you're like, oh, holy hell. Yeah. Like, it's literally like a gunshot. Like, it wakes you up,
That's one way to put it, yeah.
I mean, it's literally like the tone is one thing, and then boom, and then it just jumps into, oh, holy hell, here we go.
Yeah. Honestly, without going into full spoiler territory, Full Metal Jacket is a movie that is really hard to explain to anybody that hasn't seen it, because it is... so much happens, and so much of it is just so viscerally brutal that it's really a movie that you need to see. But I will go ahead and put the viewer warning here ahead of time. It is not for the faint of heart. If you do not, if you don't handle movies that are intentionally overly brutal with the characters that are that can be very visually difficult to watch, I would not recommend Full Metal Jacket. But for everybody else, it is a very well done movie, and it will definitely help put you in a mindset to understand and better respect what happened and what a lot of people experienced. Even though it's not actually based on real events, there is enough reality infused in there that it's not entirely fictional at its core.
Right.
So, okay, number 3.
And here's where we're probably going to lose Zim.
Yeah. Dunkirk. So, yes. While our goal here is to talk about movies that really work for Memorial Day, which does have a tendency to mean American war movies, Dunkirk has enough overlap with how it connects to America and just its overall depiction of what it was like at that specific moment in the war for everybody involved, especially on the Allied side, that it really does feel appropriate on this list.
Right. Yeah, so I guess for those that don't really know the story, it's the story of when the Germans marched across mainland Europe and basically took France. Can't remember the exact number, but I think it was over 100,000 British troops and French troops were kind of trapped on the coast of France with no way of getting out of there. Mm-hmm. And it was very much, they put their back to the ocean because they didn't have a choice. The Germans were coming, and it wasn't looking good for the good guys at that point. But it's the story of how literally everybody that had a boat traveled across the English Channel, grabbed whatever troops they could, and moved them back over to England to basically fight another day.
Yeah.
I think we're talking civilians too.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of one of those very miraculous kind of, you would think like, oh, this doesn't happen in real life, this would only happen in a movie. But no, it happened. Like, people literally were grabbing their fishing boats and traveling I think like 30 miles across the English Channel to just grab whoever they could and bring them to safety. But one thing that the movie does fantastically, and it's funny, we saw it with Zim in 70mm, which was glorious. But correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't a word of dialogue for the first like 10 to 15 minutes of the movie.
I mean, definitely for the first 10 to 15 minutes at least, but realistically, the entire dialogue for the movie could probably fit on like 10 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, the dialogue is so sparse throughout the movie. The purpose of it really is to force the viewer to be sucked into the emotion of the moment and to really feel what the characters are feeling, and that honestly is a testament to the acting ability of everybody that was on screen. I mean, I was already going into it, I was already a bit nervous, considering Harry Styles was one of the actors that was pulled in, and pulling a not even really former at the time boy band member into one of the biggest movies of that year, and definitely one of the most impactful of Nolan's career. I thought it was a bit of a risk, but clearly it was something that worked out, because he did great, and everybody else in the movie really pulled through with that connection that the viewers needed, even without the dialogue to express what was happening. You still felt it every moment, especially, and not to go too spoilery here, but there are two moments in particular involving boats that you have the main characters getting trapped in boats. One on land, one in the water, both that come under attack, and the main characters are stuck inside, and the claustrophobia that you feel as an audience member is so complete that you can. I definitely felt myself holding my breath at times, just trying to wait for the next moment to happen.
Yeah, like you said, this isn't a movie that tells you how to feel, so that it doesn't use words to get the emotions across of the characters and what they're going through. It lets you feel what they're feeling right there in that moment, like you said. It's like I said, that first 10 to 15 minutes where nobody's talking, it's literally people running through the town trying to escape the Germans to get to the beach where all the Allies are basically kind of just standing around.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that sheer terror of, like, they're coming around a corner, they don't know what's waiting for them around the corner. Is it going to be a friend? Is it going to be somebody that isn't a friend? That boat scene, especially the one on land, where they're all kind of, but
that one honestly got me more than the one on the water.
Yeah, and then the other thing that really blew my mind, and it still does blow my mind, this is under a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is a movie from Christopher Nolan, who's known for doing 2.5 plus, and he got it down to, I think, a minute 40, a minute 45.
Yeah.
And he just went
1 hour 46 minutes, start to finish, and that includes credits, which is impressive for him. Yeah. I think the closest movie that he's done to that length was Memento, and even then, I think that was still past 2 hours.
Yeah, but it's he purposefully went into this movie to make it as stripped down and as bare as possible, because he just wanted the story to do the talking. Like, even at the end of the movie, where Harry Styles is reading the newspaper and he's reading the Winston Churchill speech, it's like, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them, and he's just reading it. Like, he's not yelling it, he's literally just reading it, like he's just reading it out of a newspaper, like he's seeing it for the first time, and the music's building, and you're like, this is the guy that literally just wanted to go in and tell the story and let the story do the talking. He didn't, like we said, Michael Bay it. He didn't overly dramatize it. He didn't put a bunch of unnecessary explosions and all of that. Like, he literally just told an amazing story.
Yeah.
And that's what made the movie so great, was how stripped down it was.
Yeah. Now, if you do want to be able to see a bit more about Dunkirk specifically, we did actually do a review of it on our channel. So, after we're done with this, I'll actually link to that review here over on YouTube, up here in the iCard, that you can just click on and go check it out. But please be sure to do that after the video's done, because we still got two more movies to go through. So
but no, Dunkirk was one of those that fantastic.
But anyway, moving on, you want to talk fantastic. Our number 2 pick for a Memorial Day worthy movie is another one that we have talked about to a certain extent during our Ridley Scott Know Your Directors video. And that is, Mike?
It's Blackhawk Down.
There you go.
how do I talk about Blackhawk Down without using profanities left and right?
Intense. Intense.
That is underselling it.
Oh.
This was, you talk about claustrophobia, you talk about the fear of not knowing what's around the corner, you talk about the fear of not knowing what's behind you.
Yeah.
All of it. Like this movie captures, like, from the very start to when the first helicopter goes down, spoilers. I mean, it's only in the name of the title.
I mean,
it's only, I think it's what, 20 minutes in?
If that.
Like, it's the beginning of the movie is they're doing their prep. Hey, this is what we're doing. Standard military op. We're going to go in. We're going to get these guys. We're going to evac them out. Helicopter goes down.
Yeah.
Second helicopter goes down. Everything goes to hell.
So, something, if you've only ever seen the trailer for Blackhawk Down, something that is very worth pointing out is that the trailer, we did say that our goal here with our list was to not focus on movies that try to glorify war. And the trailer, if that's all you've seen, does make this movie seem like it's going to be kind of a Michael Bay-ish glorification of the events of what happened over in Somalia. And it's really not. I mean, you have to understand, this is Ridley Scott's directing, so he doesn't do that kind of glorification Michael Bay thing. He does overemphasize, over-exaggerate to a certain extent, but that is more of a stylistic choice rather than a storytelling device that he uses, whereas Michael Bay, that is his storytelling device. The storytelling device that comes from this movie repeatedly is the acting, the writing, and the emotional connection that you get with all the characters. And looking back at it, you recognize a lot of the actors. So especially looking back today, you as a movie-going fan will have plenty of reason to want to connect with the characters because you will recognize so many of the people. But it goes beyond that because it really does show the emotional pain that these characters and the real people went through, knowing that for the most part they're in a place they don't really want to be. They're in a place that people don't want them to be in, but they have a job to do, and right now their job is to go save their comrades, and they can't just say we're done no matter what the circumstances, and they have to put their own feelings aside just to be able to go rescue their fellow soldiers. And every aspect of that just piles on, and by the time the movie's over, you're exhausted.
So there's a really good war movie that I really, really like, Valkyrie. That didn't make the list, obviously. But there's an amazing line in that movie where the line is, "Don't forget that this is a military operation. Nothing is going to go according to plan." And this movie highlights that so perfectly. Because the second that they come up with the second that these guys come up with a plan to do something, something else goes wrong. And then another thing goes wrong. And then another thing goes wrong. Oh, we've got a Humvee, we can get out of here. Well, we just got RPG'd and now our Humvee's dead. Now we have to run 20-something blocks to get to the soccer stadium for our evac.
Yep.
Like, oh, well, a Blackhawk went down. Okay. Oh, no, another one just went down. Okay, so we can just go, oh, no, wait, we can't go through here because we just got pinched. Now we're down in a 6-hour firefight.
Yeah.
And we've got to reserve our ammo. And, oh, dude over here got shot and we're literally having to perform battlefield triage on him in the dark using a flashlight to try to keep him alive while we're taking enemy fire. The movie is...
yeah.
I'm kind of getting winded talking about it, but like in terms of... And the other thing too was that this was a modern setting. Now granted, I think if I remember right, I think the incident took place in like 94 or 95. Maybe even earlier than that. It might have been like 92, 93. But the movie came out in 2001. So, I mean, this is still, like, this is a modern military operation. This is it's foreign soil, so you don't, this isn't like a World War II movie. This isn't like a Vietnam movie. Like, this is modern. This is modern warfare.
1993.
And the horrors of modern warfare. Thank you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it has a very different context, and the only reprieve you get from any of it is like 2/3 or so of the way through, when nightfall finally hits. You have a few minutes where the action slows down enough to really refocus on the characters interacting with each other, trying to rest, trying to recover, while still being just absolutely on edge, because they don't know what could happen next, or when it could happen. And yeah. So
that's a really good point. Sorry, before we move on.
Yes.
This movie does an amazing job of it does not let you catch your breath. Like you said, like, the characters are, as soon as the first helicopter goes down and as soon as they get boots on the ground, there is not a feeling of safety. And if there is, you're immediately thinking, okay, what the hell's coming next?
Exactly. So, going into our final movie, like we said, we had a lot of movies that we wish we could have put on this list. A lot of other movies that, if we were talking best war movies of all time, we definitely would have had on here. If we were talking about our favorite war movies, not necessarily based on cinematic merit, there definitely would have been other things on there. I mean, I know you and I talked about the one good, like, genuinely good war movie that Michael Bay has done, 13 Hours, and being one of those that would definitely be list worthy if we weren't talking purely about cinematic merit.
There's a lot of movies that didn't make this list because we wrote it to 5. Like, there's a ton, not just Vietnam, not just World War II, but I mean, Glory didn't make this list. Apocalypse Now, The Thin Red Line, 1917. There's so many great movies that we just left off the list because we had a criteria for what we wanted to go for, and we just felt that these 5 did a better job of capturing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, there's so many, like, we could do a top 50 war movies of all time list if we wanted to, and we could still debate it for 5 hours because there would still be movies that we would leave off the list that we think should be on there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can't even forget, like, We Were Soldiers, or
I wouldn't say anything that melded.
I mean, technically Braveheart is a war movie. Just saying.
Okay, fair.
Technically it does
fair.
count.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, there are plenty of movies that we could be adding on here, but that, like I said, that's not the qualifier. So going into our number 1, probably going to be obvious if you have seen any of our other videos, or can just assume based on overall war movies that could qualify. Our number 1 pick is Mike.
I mean, isn't it obvious? Saving Private Ryan.
There you go. Yeah, no, Saving Private Ryan, maybe one of the best war movies of all time. Whether or not it is the best, that's a whole different conversation that we will have later. But today, for this list specifically, yeah, no, if you want a movie that is worth watching to look back on for Memorial Day and really see what you should remember about all the best parts of our men and women in the armed services, all of that is encompassed in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. It's so funny because as I was doing research for this film, as I was doing research for this category, and I was like, what movies do I want to put in there? It's funny, people classify Schindler's List as a war movie.
Technically, it happened during a war, but
right, but not really what the main focus of the movie is.
No, that's more of a World War II movie, which would be entirely accurate and worth putting in a top list. But yeah, not this.
But this one, I will still always, I think, probably until the day I die, argue that this is the most important movie that Steven Spielberg ever made.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to go beyond movies, the mini-series that he did after this with Band of Brothers would be worth throwing in just because it was this but more. But movies only, Saving Private Ryan, without question. Yeah.
Yeah, so this movie, there hadn't been a lot of movies that captured the horror of World War II. There had been movies that glorified it. There had been movies that, like, oh yes, these guys went through some stuff. You and I were what, 11? 12 when this movie came out? Came out in 98. I will never forget...
11, yeah.
Yeah, so I will never forget this movie coming out, and I really wanted to see it, because I'm a big history person.
Yeah, me too.
And my dad was like, you know, I've heard a lot of stuff about it, let me watch it, and we'll talk. And we watched it, and he said no. And he basically said, you're not ready to understand the gravity of what happens.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not just talking about the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes are graphic, but that's not the hardest part of the movie to digest.
So remember, the movie actually starts with them at the American cemetery in Normandy. So it's actually probably about 10 minutes in is when it's 10 minutes in is when it jumps back to D-Day, and it is one of the most chaotically horrifying, sickening to your stomach things that I've ever seen on film.
Yeah, but that's still not the hardest part of the entire movie. It is the hardest individual scene, but everything else about the movie, the constantly impending sense of mortality that you experience from every character, and the amount of loss that you and the characters experience together as the movie goes forward, that alone is a lot harder to emotionally process than any individual part of that D-Day scene.
Yeah, and it's the entire movie does not. That's one thing that I really appreciate about this film, is that it does not pull punches.
Yeah.
It's, hey, like, you get really close to these characters, you get emotionally invested in these characters. A lot of these characters are very likable. A lot of them are just kids that are just wanting to serve their country, and they just wanted to enlist because it was the right thing to do, and they die. Some of them die horribly, and like you're literally just sitting there like it feels like there are certain characters that when you lose a character, it feels like a punch in the stomach every time.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not the big, like, over the top war scenes. It's the in between skirmishes when they're walking across the French countryside and they're all just talking.
Yeah.
And they're all just like, oh, like, what's your life back? Like when Tom Hanks does the great scene, he's like, I'm a baseball coach in Pennsylvania. He's like, and they have a running joke that they all have a pool on their captain as to whether or not he's going to survive the war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this super tense scene where they're debating on executing a prisoner of war. And they're all sitting there fighting amongst themselves, and Tom Hanks just looks at him, he's like, what's the pool up to now? And like, they'll just stop, they're like, what? He's like, what's the pool on me up to? He's like, what's it up to now? He's like, I don't want to be here as much as y'all don't want to be here. He's like, but I mean, he's like, we have a mission to do, and if it gets me home to my wife and kids, then I'm going to do it. Yeah. It's the realism.
Yeah.
It's the, like you said, it's not the Rambo, it's not the Schwarzenegger last action hero where he's the big over the top macho, you know, Hollywoodized war hero. He's just a dude. He is just a guy.
Which may be one of the best descriptions of any Tom Hanks character.
Yes.
Just a dude, but at the same time, it says leagues about the intentionality of how this particular character of his was created, and what Steven Spielberg was trying to convey with him.
And the story, the story is amazing too. Like, the story is literally, I mean, we don't have to say spoilers at this point, right? The movie's almost 2 decades old.
I mean, you would think, so.
But so, Matt Damon's character is the last surviving of 4 brothers.
Yes.
And like, and that's a scene that's really heart-wrenching too, is that Mom's in the kitchen doing dishes, and she looks up and she sees the army car driving up the road, and she just comes out and she's told that 3 of her sons are dead. And basically, top brass makes a call that, like, we're gonna go and we're gonna rescue this 4th kid and send him home because we don't want a mother to have all of her 4 kids die in battle.
Yeah.
And there's that amazing scene where they're traveling through, and they finally find him, and they're just like, it's so brilliant that, like, they just have this look of disgust on their face, and they have this look of like, hey, we've been looking for you, our buddies have died looking for you, you're going home. And it really brings up that moral conundrum of, like, he doesn't think that he's special. He wants to say, because who is he to go home when his brothers are dying by his side?
Yeah. And I mean, I think the part of this movie, and this, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up, but I think the part of this movie that is the most important, makes it worthy of rewatching, specifically for Memorial Day, is the fact that it really does focus, like you said, on the essence that the characters here are not professional soldiers. They are not guys that that all their lives always thought about wanting to join the military and wanting to get in, to train, to go serve their country the moment they could, for as long as they could. These are just guys that were forced into this situation, who were willing to do their duty, that were willing to serve their country, and will absolutely serve it to their dying breath, because that is their duty. Period. End of discussion. And the humanity that you see expressed through that, just that sentiment alone is, I think, easily forgotten, especially today, when war is something that is just so common for us to be seeing on the news or on the internet or on everywhere, basically. It's so easy to forget the humanity behind it, that not everybody involved trains to be a professional soldier, that is their life's goal. And it's easy to forget the people that are involved. And I think Saving Private Ryan is one of the best examples of reminding us about that. Even though it's what, a century, the events that it's depicting are almost a century past, it's still relevant. And I think that's what makes it important.
There's a reason why they're called the greatest generation.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, this movie showed, like, a lot of these were kids that were like 15, 16 years old that literally lied about their age to go fight because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. So,
but
with that,
that's a movie that we could literally talk about for 2 hours.
Easily.
And if you haven't seen it,
just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, like there are certain films that, like, you have to see to understand certain parts and pieces of history, and this is a must-watch.
Yes. So, with that, guys, thank you for sticking around this long. We appreciate it so much. Question of the day: what movie do you wish had been on this list? Please tell us down in the comments. Let us know. We would love to hear from you. Maybe we'll even be able to include it on our next list that we do for this or something similar. But yeah, and of course, once again, do not forget, if this is the first time you watched us or you just haven't done it already, do not forget to follow us over on Facebook and subscribe over on YouTube. And of course, share us with your friends. We'd love to get their thoughts on all this as well. So with that, this has been Brad and Mike with Dallas Geek saying Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. You guys stay safe. Be safe out there.
Bye.